Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Tapes2Flag podcast. Joined, as always, with Mr. Dillon tonight. We're joined by the director of Speedway at Buxton, Laurence Rogers. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
We're okay, sir. Busy, as you might guess.
Yeah, not too bad. Laurence, first we've got to obviously thank you for coming on to do this. I know you've been really busy, and media's not necessarily the thing you've had time to do yet. So for us to get you to come on for a little chat is much appreciated.
No worries. I think there's a lot of interest in what we're doing at Buxton, and good for people to know it.
So I want to start off from the beginning. Really, it was quite suspected and not a surprise when Birmingham announced they were going. Where did the brainwave of going to Buxton come from, and when did you really set the wheels in motion to revive Buxton?
Well, we were looking at a few things. Buxton kept cropping up. I tried to get training schools there a couple of years ago, but the Mosses had it then. They weren't that interested in being able to let somebody else in there, and Andy Dugmore and Steve Rolliston were pushing me and saying, "Right, come on." So in the end, I said, "Oh, go on, then we'll do something." So Steve sent an email up to the Buxton Raceway, and basically saying, "Could you ring Laurence Rogers? I think you know him, Barry, from years back when he was trying to save Craigley, and you came down." 2 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's Barry. He goes, "I thought you were, excuse my French, effing dead." He said, "Blood me neck." He says, "Right," he said, "when can you come? Can you come tomorrow?" So that was it. Steve and I were off to Buxton the next morning. Went in there with a load of different questions, and before we'd even asked one, he'd already answered the first two, which helps us. What's the planning permission situation, and when can it be used? Planning's all there. You can use it whenever you like. He says, "Only one weekend I want it when I've got my big meeting on, but yeah, you can run any day of the week you want to."
I suppose it makes it a bit easier when you've got a landowner that is happy to have Speedway there. It seems to be a dying thing now that landowners aren't so interested in Speedway. So if you've got someone that proactively wants Speedway there, it made things a lot easier than you having to go and sell it, pitch it to him.
Because he was the original promoter with Chris Morton when the small track was inside the car racing track, and then Ken Moss built the Speedway with the one at the bottom. But Barry knew all about Speedway. He'd been a promoter before, so he knows the ins and outs of it. So that was a plus from that point of view. And as I said, having known him X number of years ago, we were on an even keel straight away.
And you've got a team of people you know very well. Obviously, people who've got you on Facebook or anything. You often refer to the Birmingham supporters and volunteers as the best volunteers in Speedway. A lot of them have come to Buxton with you. Was that always an important aspect of going, or were you going to be going regardless of who came and who didn't? Is it did it rely on those supporters sticking with you and the volunteers?
Very much so, because what we did is that we went up there on the Sunday after I'd seen Barry, and we walked round and I showed them everything that needed to be done, buildings to take down, fencing to do, everything else. So we spent a couple of hours there. Then we went had a cup of tea in Leek, and my first question was, "Is it yes or no?" And it was yes, 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 yes. It was a unanimous yes. And then we formed a little group between us then to start things moving. And then it was onwards and upwards, and other people joined on with us. And they are the best volunteers in Speedway. I don't think any track has got what we had at Birmingham and now what we've got at Buxton. We've got some people who've come aboard with us at Buxton now helping. One of which, Dave Roscoe, who runs the Speedway Spares, has been absolutely brilliant. And he's introduced us to sponsors and everything else. He's been great. John Cox. And has been up with Liam helping as well. We've had the Fletchers up there, and as people said, "Yeah, well, we're going to come up and help." Basically, if anyone wants to come and craft a bit on a Sunday, great. Sean Tedden, the ex-Stoke rider, and Nigel Cravity's daughter and her sons came the other week as well, and they did a load of work. It's an ongoing process there.
And Palmer, obviously, you've been into Speedway a lot longer than I have. What were your reactions when Buxton announced they were coming back? Because Buxton, the initial Buxton, was towards the end of its life when I got into Speedway, so I never really got to experience it.
To be fair, as soon as I'd seen the graphic online to say that Buxton was coming back, there was an air of excitement about it because, I remember Buxton when Scunny was half a decent team back in the day. And we went up to Buxton and it was absolutely chucking it down with rain. And we was watching the meeting from the back straight in our cars. I think we won 60-30, something like that, because we was really good back then. But now it's really encouraging to see an old track coming back. And, this could just be a blueprint for your Coventry's, your Peterboroughs, your Swindons, etc. as well.
And Palmer's next important question then, Laurence, can you still watch Speedway at Buxton next year from your car on the back straight?
You definitely can. Yes, they'll be there. The back straight will have all the cars along there. Then on the home straight, there's something that people thought would never happen at Buxton. There's stands for people to go in with a roof on.
So it really is a proper setup going on there, and all of the stands and things are being built up by the volunteers as well. Everything is being done by your own volunteers and your own manpower.
Absolutely, yeah, because they're the Birmingham ones which we bought off Nigel at the time. Had them delivered up there, and then the one week I think we had about 30 people there doing different jobs. And Dave Roscoe and John Cox and Liam said, "Do you want us to start doing the stands?" I said, "Do you know much about scaffolding?" They went, "Nah, not a thing." So on they went. And if you look at the pictures now, you'll see that they've already got the one bottom end there, which will be the duct hair stand. That end is almost up. And then the other side, they're about probably 3/4 of the way through what will be the Ken Moss stand. And then we're also going to have, for the wheelchair people, a little area in front of the referee's box in the middle of the two stands.
So just to give us an idea of how much work you've had to do, what was it like when you got there, and sort of what, where are we at now? I've just put on the screen some of the pictures that you sent me across of some of the stuff you've had to do. What was it like when you got there, and how much of your volunteers and yourself had to do there?
In all honesty, it was a dump. The track hadn't been used. Well, they did some of the ride and slides on part of it before, but it hadn't been used as Speedway tracks in 2018. The surface looked terrible. Graham came over from Sheffield and had a look for me and made some suggestions. But then the buildings wise, everything was falling apart. The roof was coming down, the walls were coming down. The kids had been in and smashed windows. It was in a totally derelict state, if you like. But now that's almost down on the first bend. We're hoping this weekend we'll be able to flatten that. We've also bought a caravan, which is going to be the sponsor media centre, which will be on the first bend. At the moment, it's at the back, and it's being used to talk to sponsors when they come up on a Sunday, or to do. I did a media interview yesterday with Morelands Radio, and we've got that element that'll be there, right on the first bend. The changing rooms. We've bought new changing rooms. Plus, they've got to be finalised, and then we've got to put another shower block in. The toilets have been new windows put in at the moment. There's a lot going on there. There's the roofing on the containers. You name it. It's been there. And then the lads have been replacing all the posts on the safety fence and the tyres. That's near enough done now. And then they'll start then on the other fencing, the 2-metre fence away, and that'll all be renewed as well. So I don't think we'll have any time off between now and the start of the season.
And I was at Birmingham when you were there for a couple of seasons. You were almost the unsung hero, the behind the scenes. Now you've very firmly got your finger back on the pulse, and you're back, directing things at Buxton. Is this the role that you kind of thrive? Is this an area you thrive in?
Very much so. It doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to all the volunteers, and in particular to Tony and Melvin Hipkiss, who are the main investors, and to Ductair, who've been very good with us. We've got a lot going on, as we know. But they're all behind us, and that is brilliant from that point of view.
And you've got John and Big Boy working on the track at the minute. Is that going to be a thing that happens for the season? Is that going to be your track curation team, or is this just to get the track in good condition and raceable, and then you'll have a track team for the actual season?
Well, John will be doing it in the main. He's also going to work with Sid, who's comes through the ranks from being, a 14-year-old boy cleaning up everything to driving all the vehicles. He's going to be taught there because we would have a young track curator. Big Boy will have his role in coaching with the riders as well. And as we said, Graham will be coming over occasionally as well to oversee everything as a senior trackman. So that's important from my point of view. This whole project is aimed at youth development, and I think that's the thing that has been ignored by a lot of tracks in the country. I think the tracks should be made to do what we do. We kept the MDL going, and we're going to do that again now with 4 teams at Buxton.
And I think that leads us nicely into Palmer's next question, which was commented by a good friend of yours, Andy Harrison.
Ironically, the exact same question's just being commented in our YouTube comments.
Yeah, it has.
So, is the intention to eventually look towards championship racing after a period of consolidation, or is the plan just to do National League only with some training days?
It will be National League. I'm not sure if championship would be viable. We don't know. It's basically a suck it and see thing. But the aim is to have the youth development. We'll be doing lots of practices, training schools. I've already got 9 groups who want to hire the place out. So the track will be well used from that point of view. But Andy Harris is a great guy. He's done a lot for me there, and I helped Luke when he first started. But he knows that, my aim is to support those kids, and we'll have them we've got the mini track we've put into the middle now. We'll have them on Revies and 50s, Pee-wee 50s on there. We'll have the 125s, the 250s, and the MDL and the National League Championship. I don't know. I don't personally. I'm happy to be working at the level that we're going to be working at.
And you touch on the National League and stuff there. You put out a press release this morning on the Buxton social media that you want to enter into a National League and a National Trophy if both competitions exist again. Is this hold up in the AGM from the top 2 leagues frustrating somebody like yourself that's waiting to get accepted into league racing? Because at the minute you're doing all this work and you don't know if you're going to be accepted.
We don't, but we've had the nod. Naturally, that things should be all okay. I've arranged the inspection with Johnny Swales for the SCB. So things are moving a little bit from our point of view. But the AGM being put off until January the 6th naturally affects the National League, because we can't have that. I need to know what clubs are going to be riding at our level. And if there's going to be 2 leagues, we will put 2 teams in, because we want as many fixtures as possible. It also keeps the riders happy when they've got the chance of extra fixtures. So yes, it is frustrating by the fact there's been a delay.
And at Birmingham, you were a little bit restricted, you and your volunteers. You only had track access on a Sunday and a race day. You now have full-time track access at Buxton. What are the differences? Is that is that easier to negotiate, or you could spend all week up there if you wanted to? Does that level of freedom offer more opportunities for you and the team?
It does, because as I said about the training schools. I've said to Neil Vatcher as well, if he wants to run a youth camp, I've also said that with Pippa Laverty with the women to see if they want to make use of Buxton. It's there, it can be used. As we said, 363 days a year, because 2 days I have to let Barry have for his big British Championship meeting in June, so we can't run that particular weekend. We're also working very closely with the Stockcaster to make sure we don't run on the same day unless we have to, because I think that's better. We're also had meetings with their commercial department, and we're doing a lot of joint ventures with them, going out to some fairs, and we've got one at Utoxeter in June. We're also having a big open day on Saturday, March the 14th, where there'll be stock car stuff and small cars for the kids and everything else, there'll also be Speedway. And the idea being that people come and watch the stock cars, they can come down and watch the Speedway, then back to the stock cars, and then we'll have some sort of social event in the evening. So we're trying to do something different from that point of view. And, our response, as you've seen, to our social media, and give Andy and Dave their due, they've done a brilliant job on all the stuff going out there. We're making sure people know we're here and we're back.
And I think Palmer had another question
Um,
about the Buxton name and the name change.
Yeah, 100%. So naturally, obviously, on the British Speedways forum, which, as we all know, is the ultimate source of speedway information this day and age. Was the intention to always rename it to the Buxton Bulls, or was there some consideration of keeping it as the Hitmen?
Oh, it was going to be a new venture. It's nothing to do with the old days, etc. I know some people. I know Dean Felton was quite vocal about it. It should be still the Hitmen, but no, we wanted it to be our identity, especially with the tie-up with Ducktair as our team sponsors. They've been, the Ducktair Bulls. Well, it was Chris Bowen Bulls to start with at Birmingham. Then the Ducktair Bulls are synonymous with us, and the fact that Ducktair are on board as our main sponsors at Buxton, we wanted to continue that element of keeping the name, and if you look across from the track, guess what's in the field next door is Bulls.
And you touch on there retaining the sponsorship of Ducktair. You've also got an ongoing sponsorship with OK T-shirt as well. Chris at OK T-shirt. They're not located down that way. They're Midlands based. But is it important to keep the relationships you've built up during your time with Birmingham?
Very much so, because Chris and Sheila will be there every Sunday. Chris from OK is bringing up his family. The kids can't wait. They're going to bring their little bikes up and we'll go on the mini track as well. But we're also working on more local sponsorship as well. But it's great to retain two good backers who've been with me for a couple of years.
And you touched on the mini track there as well. Obviously, 2014 predominantly there was a lot at Perry Bar with the Revy bikes and stuff, and that had to be shelved a little bit last year with some SCB rules about them not being allowed on the track. Is there going to be the place for that to become a thing and almost be the centre of Revy again now at Buxton next year?
Well, that's the aim. I've still got to talk it out with the SCB, etc. I think the reason why it was stopped was ridiculous. The kids can't get electrocuted from those bikes, which is the thing that was put across there. But we will encourage use of our mini track, even if it's we can't do it during the meeting. We can do it before the meeting and after the meeting, I'm sure.
And in the modern day Speedway, streaming is a big thing nowadays, and as humans naturally we like to jump on the new thing or the hot topic. So your crowds will be up next year, and is there a consideration for streaming for people who perhaps can't get down to the track?
Got to be looked at naturally. There's a cost element in there. We were lucky at Birmingham that we had Pete Ballinger who had his old equipment, etc. That he was able to do that. Not sure whether or not we'll have that facility initially. It's hard. It is hard to say.
And we obviously put out a question the other day asking if people had any questions for you. A couple that came in. Adam Lyons, a friend of mine and Dan's, and came to Birmingham, a Coventry supporter. What do you think would save the sport and move it forwards to protect the future of British Speedway if you were in charge of those decisions?
You got to start at the bottom end and build upwards. Really, we've got to have what we're doing with the youth development. That's going to move on, so that the lads have got a aim of a ladder to move up there. Encourage as much as possible. With the top league relies on a lot of foreign riders, and they weren't cheap. And I think that's half the battle for promoters at the top end.
And kind of touching on that as well, in recent years we've seen a lot of young riders, National League and lower end Championship riders, call it a day from the sport. Ashton Bowden this year, and Kyle Bickley, Nathan Greaves, Sonny Springer took a bit of a time out as well. He's back for next year. But is it a concern that so many young riders are deciding that the opportunities aren't there for them, and they don't see their hard work being rewarded?
I think that Ben Trigger's the same. I was with his dad at the show at Gaydon, and Ben's still keeping his bikes, but it's another one that's will be there. But they're not really getting the opportunity. I know Ben was frustrated about being dropped at Plymouth, and that hasn't helped him. Sonny Springer is just coming back this year, thank God, from that point of view. It is hard, but there's got to be more. There's got to be a set structure that they know how to progress. Our MDL gives chances for the National League. The National League gives opportunities for the Championship, and then Championship, it's up to, they can move on to the bigger things. But there's not a set pattern, is there? It's just willy-nilly, to be honest.
And I was at Birmingham this year for the Bulls meetings, the National Development Trophy team that you ran, and me and Palmer have said multiple times on watch-alongs and streams and stuff on here that some of the best racing we saw this year was at National League level. Why do you think, and that's a general consensus, but not so many supporters come in, what do you think could be done to entice people into National League racing? And they can see that you might not have your big names, but the racing's just as good, if not better.
I'd agree. The best meetings at Birmingham last year were the National Trophy meetings. To be honest, some of the Premiership ones were dire. That's not mincing my words.
Yeah.
But getting people to come, and it's only kids going round, but some of them aren't just kids. And if you look at the progression of riders who started off in the MDL, the NJL, onto the National League and upwards, it's quite a long list. But it needs all the clubs to buy into doing progression. As I said before, I think it should be compulsory that every club does some sort of second half. They should have some sort of thing. It's before your time of there, but there was a thing called the Anglia Junior League years ago, and every club used to have their team, and they rode home and away on the same night as the main team. Why can't we get back to that? I had some team manager and promoter say, there's no riders out there. Really? Oh, well, what do they do on a Saturday or Sunday? I'll go on what's grass track. I think we brought about 11 riders out of grass track last year. And I've got another load who want to come and do it this year.
And one of the riders you mentioned about grass track and coming back there was Darryl Richins, and he came back for you. He came back to National League as well, and also took up a short-term spell at Poole. That must have been a nice feeling, because I think I'm right in saying you were one of the people he contacted to come back and ride for your National League, Trophy team. So that must have been a nice feeling to see somebody that came back from an extended period off to get the opportunities even at Championship level, and in truth was probably harshly dropped by Poole as well.
Well, Darryl actually started riding for me at Newport. He made his debut on one day after his 15th birthday and scored, I think, 8 paid 9. We've had a long association with Darryl. He rode for me at Coventry. Last year, the year before, I bumped into him at the grass tracks, and I said, you seem to be enjoying that. What about Speedway? He goes, I don't know. And then he came to the show at Gaydon last year and said, is it definite you're going to do National League? I went, yeah. Yeah, I'll be there. Starting point. And then, he went on and did well. He did the league and the trophy. As you said, he did some championship stuff, and he never gave everyone out of trouble, and he always gave you 120%. And I love to see him get a championship spot now. He's not been named anywhere yet, but he's a good lad, his dad.
Palmer, do you want to read out Dan Westlake's comment?
Just before I do, and I'm only asking this primarily because it's straight up on my screen here. Andy Harrison sent me a text. Right. Ask Laurence if he needs a number 1. So, Laurence, do you need a number 1?
Is Andy offered himself or Luke?
No, with Andy, it'll probably be him.
Yeah. Well, if Luke wants to come back and ride for me, I don't mind talking.
And on to Dan Westlake's comments now. Kids or not, without them, Speedway has no future. These stars we watch now won't be around in 15 years' time. People need to remember that.
It's very true. And what would your
Very-
reaction to that be, Laurence, as well? It's trying to get people into that mindset, isn't it? Of National League is going to be your top end championship riders in a few years' time.
That's the important thing. They've got to not think they're wobblers out there for a second half. Second halves maybe 20, 25 years ago did have wobblers in the second half, but they're not now. These lads, and I don't think any team manager, any promoter would bring someone who was a wobbler. They see something in them. This is I'll be running these training schools and these practices, and hopefully we'll pick up some new riders and develop them as well.
And you mentioned there about some people saying the lack of riders. With your Bulls team last year, you got the opportunity to promote a couple of riders from your MDL team, the Crew brothers, come in for guest bookings. Is that the idea of what will happen here? People at Buxton will come in for MDL and stuff like that, and they'll have the opportunity to develop through International League if they stick at it and work hard.
Very much so. I've already had a couple of the MDL lads who've been contacting me to say, would I be under consideration for a National League spot? And basically, they all are. If they can show that they're making that progress and they're ready for it, and there's an opportunity, we'll put them in.
We had another comment when we asked about the questions from Paul Wheeler. He said, if money, riders and stadiums weren't an issue, what ex-club that you've been involved in would you like to be back in Speedway and why?
That's a difficult one. I suppose from the fact that I'm from that time, we'd love to see Newport back. Get the old Wasps going again. That'll be a good one. Stoke. I enjoyed myself at Stoke. Ellesmere Port. I could keep on going. We've had a lot of interest from Stoke. It's funny. We did an analysis on our social media thing, and 24.7% of our people who've been following us on Facebook and all the rest are from Stoke. And I know a lot of the old Stoke fans from my time there, and they're all saying they're coming. Interesting thing, when we were at Gaydon for the show last week, we were one of the only 4 clubs in there, which the other ones were Oxford, Peterborough and Workington. Right? We had an army of our people all dressed in their Buxton tops and everything going around. The number of people who came up and said, well done for what you're doing, we'll be there for your opening meeting at least, or we're going to be there on a regular basis. And if all of those come on April the 5th when we open, it's going to be the biggest crowd they've seen at Buxton, I think.
And there's a little bit of an exclusive, I suppose, the April the 5th date drop. That is your planned date. That's what you're working towards. And are you on track to achieve that date now?
We are, yeah. We'll have practices running fairly soon, so we can get the track moving a bit. But yeah, our opening will be Easter Sunday, April the 5th, when, thanks to Dave Roscoe, we've got Regina Chain who've sponsored the meeting. It'll be a fours event, which will also involve some of the teams' names, which we use in the MDL. There'll be a Potters team, there'll be a Kings team, there'll be a Wolves team, and there'll be a Buxton Bulls team. So the riders will be spread around in all those there. So that'll be a 4-team tournament plus a full second half. So that's the opening day. Sunday, April the 5th, Easter Sunday. So, no school the next day. So hopefully, a lot of people will make the effort. We will be opening these turnstiles very early, because if the crowd comes in that we think we're going to get, we don't want great long queues at 10 to 3 and have to hold the meeting up.
And Ian Sabin's just commented on the stream. I'd like to see Cradley Heath come back one day if that could happen.
They may do I might do a challenge with them. Ellesmere Port, Bradford have been in touch. Long Eaton have been in touch. Cradley, Coventry. We'll do other second halves involving those teams.
And you talk about the track and stuff. We had a message sent to our page from an old Buxton. Well, I think he used to go to Buxton by the looks of the message. He said, "Are you going to change the camber on the first turn to allow an outside overtaking spot, because it always used to seem to be around the inside?"
Completely changed, and we've taken the big rock out of it as well that they used to all hit and go flying off from. If you look at some of the latest pictures, you'll see how John has got the levels near enough right now.
And And there's just a couple of questions here that we had about just British Speedway in general. First of all, your Buxton venture is one of the good pieces of news to come out in a time where Sheffield's been placed up for sale, Ipswich is up for sale, Birmingham has closed, and Premiership-wide Oxford have withdrawn from that. Is this a big crossroads for British Speedway, the like that we haven't seen for a few years?
Very much so, and that's why all the delays have gone on, because the Premiership are not in a position at the moment to finalise what they're doing. I know that there's lots of things going on behind the scenes with people putting offers in for tracks, etc., and change of promoters in different places. But I think all that will be sorted. And there will still be a Premiership. People are always pushing for one league. I don't think it could happen, because there's not enough riders or the riders won't get the same to book. He'd also put the price of a rider up as well, because if he's only got one team to ride for, he wants to earn more money.
Palmer, have you got anything else?
To be fair, I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but with the current state of the Premiership as it is, as we've just obviously mentioned, how does this affect, like yourselves, being a new club wanting to enter the National League?
It's just the fact that they need to be settled before everyone else can, finalise everything. The Championship have sort of drawn a line down the middle, if you like, at the moment. You've got full teams being announced, and I must admit, Glasgow's was so professional. And even Little Cruz coming at the end was lovely. What a way to announce your team. The Championship are well ahead at the moment. That's not to say the Premiership have already got their riders lined up, and once they've dot the I's, cross the T's, and everything else, who knows? But it does have an adverse effect on our league, which we want to be in the National League. I need to know how many teams, how many fixtures, so I can work around. Because, as I said, we don't want to do one meeting, one there, and not have another one for 4 weeks. We want every other week at least. And then continuity's there.
And I just want to touch on briefly before we wrap this up. The Birmingham closure happened very, very quickly, and we've all seen the pictures that you put out now. The stadium, you wouldn't have even known it was there. What is the emotion for that like? I know you've obviously got this new venture now, but you spent a long time at Birmingham. What's it like now to see it's essentially been wiped off the face of the earth? It was like it never existed.
It was horrible, mate. It was myself, Chris Butler, a few others who were there. We could see the place being pulled to it, and at the end, with just the one wall left there. It was mind blowing. The first time I went across and they'd already started to take things down, it was like, wow. But then it happened so quick. I was down there on a regular basis to try and sort out the stuff that was there, because Nigel had gone off on holiday, and so I was dealing with everything there, plus moving all the stuff that we had bought to transport to Buxton there. So, but as I said, we stood there that last, I think it was a Thursday, I think it was, of that week, as the last part of the stand was going down, and we were just loading the last bit of the stands onto a lorry, and then off we went. And next time you went there, it was like a wall all the way around the inside of the stadium.
And obviously you're so involved with stuff you're doing at Buxton at the moment, and you had to, a couple of weeks back, flick back into the Birmingham stuff with the end of season party. And I know a couple of people who went said it was a bit like a wake at a funeral. Was that how it felt? It's hard to have a party when the stadium's gone. We know what's happened with the club, and it's all just happened really quickly. Would that sum it up, that it was like a wake?
That's what we called it between all of us. We sat there. All the volunteers sat on the one table on the one side there. There were supporters there. There was, I was going to say matron, because you know who matron is. There was Tracy and Nigel and fans. And I'd like to thank the MDL lads who made the effort to come to that, and Aaron Butcher and Eli Meadows made the effort. Sam Hagan was there as well. And that was good to see. But it wasn't a party that way.
And I saw you working with your trophy team last season as well. Everybody seemed to really get along. There was a lot of joy and laughter and stuff. Was that important with how you built your team?
is. The seven of them got on so well. They worked with each other, they helped each other. There was a great spirit. I didn't have to, only on a few occasions, lift anybody. I know Lionel when it came to heat 15. I had a hell of a choice who could put out there for those races. You know, I was chuffed to be with the boys we had. Connor Coles came in for a couple when Max James got wrongly because of Edinburgh. It was months suspension, which was totally wrong. Messed his head up completely. But the spirit was amazing.
And I think that's probably where we'll draw this to a close. We'd obviously like to thank Laurence for coming on and joining us and giving us some time to talk about this, and keep your eyes on the Buxton social media, and April the 5th as a planned opening date at Buxton, so get down and check that out. And I'm sure I speak for me and Palmer when we wish you the success with it, and we look forward to coming down and seeing the finished product of all the hard work of this winter.
Thanks very much.